a lot of people do this because they think a barking dog looks really sexy.
Yeah.
Some of the cases that I've worked, I really would wish that my dog wouldn't bark because I don't want the public thinking what's happening.
Canine Detection Collaborative. We bring the conversation straight to you. Training tips and helpful hints you'll actually use. Real insights from real experts with a side of laughs. Canine Detection Collaborative is where it's at. It all comes down to just one thing, helping our dogs be the best they can be. Canine Detection Collaborative.
Hi, this is Stacy Barnett from Canine Detection Collaborative, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Robin.
Hello.
And we have a pretty cool topic today that we find, I find that I end up like commenting on a lot to Robin because I'm just like going, hey, interesting. Hey, this is interesting. And we have all of these offline conversations. And so we just kind of decided to turn it into a podcast. So today we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of a bark alert and some pitfalls that you might encounter if you're training one. So that's kind of what the topic is today. And I do want to just mention, because I know I'd actually posted a video of Jack doing a bark alert first time on containers. And I know someone had posted on my video that it looked interesting to them. I just want to comment that this is not something that our sport handlers should be doing on their dogs. So just a little bit of a footnote on that one, mostly because it's frowned upon, because if you're waiting in line, it's unknown number of hides. That can be a spoiler alert for people. And NACSW is actually moving to disallow it. So however, I think it's really important for our sport handlers to still listen to this because we're going to be getting a lot into criteria. And so that part of this podcast will be absolutely relevant. So anyway, that was my little disclaimer, a little footnote. Anyway, so now we...
Right. Well, and I was thinking the same thing as you were saying that because what we're actually going to be talking about is a complex behavior that's trained with duration and distance.
Yeah, which could be anything, but we're talking about it in this context.
In this context of using a bark alert. And everybody seems to think a bark alert is so easy. and you know, it's one of those things where it is.
Yeah.
If you have a live person on the other end.
Yeah.
Because that live person is basically your treat dispenser.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And it's one of these things where I had listened to you for a long time where, you know, I'd be watching handlers and a lot of HR handlers would come and say like, hey, you know, I want to have a bark alert. And your question to them was always, why?
Why?
And, you know, and I heard a lot and I've heard from a lot of the wilderness folks, and I hear this a lot, right? My dog might be out of my sight or something. And that seems to be kind of like the
rote answer.
That's the rote answer. Exactly.
Right.
So then fast forward, right? You know, I start doing USAR with Prize and, you know, she's a live fine dog. And I changed her from she used to have a refine. Now she's a bark alert. She's a really nice bark alert. And I'm still listening. I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah. You know, okay. I'm kind of understanding this. It wasn't that hard to get a bark alert on her.
No.
And fast forward to Jack, right? So Jack is now a budding human remedies detection dog, and I developed his bark alert. And I have to say, all of a sudden, I went, "Oh,
yeah,
now," and hence all these like offline comments I've been making to Robin and why, you know, we're thinking like, hey, this would be a great podcast topic.
Yeah.
All of a sudden the I get it now I really started to understand.
Right. And it's one of those things where I actually did the whole, when people come in and tell me that, and I'm like, okay, Let's think about this but what if my dog, I can't see my dog?
Right.
And the first response I have to that is, well, okay, theoretically, your dog is wearing a GPS collar.
Right.
You know where your dog is.
Right. For the wilderness.
Right. For wilderness people.
Yeah.
So that is actually something that you need to think about. Yes, your technology can fail, all of these things. And okay, and I'm going to say this with a disclaimer for people, because I know somebody out there is going to say, well, but that's not my dog. I know, right?
Oh, the yeah buts?
Yeah, the yeah buts. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the predominantly, right? Because anything we know in dog training is always, it depends.
Right.
So predominantly, people are going to have GPS collars on their dogs. There have been times when your GPS may fail. Yes, but your most cadaver dogs, as they mature, tend to not work very far from their handler.
And actually, what's interesting is I would say a lot of the HR handlers in wilderness I've seen don't actually use GPS collars. So that might even be if you're not, why not?
Right. You should be.
Yeah.
Because that should be going in your report.
Right.
You know, we get into all of that, you know, actual physical stuff. And then I'll be honest, I've been in places with a live fine dog who's got a bark alert, and you can't hear them because things are too thick, or they're down in a ravine, or whatever is going on,
or it's echoing,
or whatever. Right. There's all of those sorts of things. And then you layer on top of that with the fact of, does your dog like to bark?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Case in point, Flash.
Yeah.
Had everything it took to do, I mean, if I wanted to do wilderness cadaver dog work with her, she would have been beautiful. I would have
been
had
amazing.
Wonderful sit on her, sit and stay there, or sit and stare at source or whatever. But I wanted to do FEMA level work with her, and she said, I don't want to bark. I couldn't get her frustrated for the life of me to bark.
Yeah, she just didn't bark. But then you also have dogs that, you know, when they're thinking they can't bark, you know, it's like the air barks.
Yeah. Nico does snappy barks, and his tail's got to wind up the bark to come out the other end.
But, you know, but Nico also has a ton of drive in there.
He does. And it comes out.
And you've worked on the criteria.
Right. And so you might not have a dog that likes to bark. And that's actually when I have a handler who's like, no, I want to have a bark alert. And my first question to them is, okay, we can go down that path. Is your dog barky in general? And if they're like, no, I'm like, this is going to be a tough row to hoe.
Yeah.
What happens is, as you start putting more stressors on the dog, being longer nose time, being more footing, being, you know, whatever it is, hot, all of these
hot's
things.
A big one.
Hot's a big one.
Yeah.
Now you're actually asking the dog to do a behavior that is economically quite expensive for them.
Yep.
And the question becomes is, can you provide enough reinforcement for that to actually happen?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the other conversations that I tend to get into with people. And don't worry, later we can talk about if you really, 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 really want a bark alert. I have ideas, and
or you have to have one.
Right. And I have a class.
Yeah.
Big shocker. It's one of those things to really think about on the, do you have a barky dog?
Yep. Yeah. And I was going to add in the heat part of it, because even if you have a barky dog, you know, depending upon the length of the search, right, how winded they are, sometimes they just don't have the air for that.
Right.
And you've got to have the conditioning and the drive behind it.
I always tell people, I'm asking my dog to run a foot race of some nature, and then they have to come back and yell at me and tell me that they did it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are we sure that that's what we want to have done?
Yeah. And do it consistently.
Right.
And reliably.
Yes. And when you're doing it for live find, then it's when somebody else's life is on the line. And that's a lot of, oh, craps.
Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
that's, so when we start thinking about the pros and just the pros of cons of should we, one of the questions I always encourage people to ask themselves is, can we versus should we?
Yeah.
Can I versus should I?
Yeah.
And I can train it, but should I?
Yeah.
And dogs can do lots of really, really super amazing things. But a lot of sometimes we find ourselves in the legal world, right? Legal world says, no, you can't do that. You can't because legally you can't. But a lot of times it depends on the should we. Should I actually be doing that?
Yeah. And if we talk about like there is a subset where it is required.
Right.
But if you like, so for your urban search and rescue dogs, your USAR dogs is required.
Correct. And
because of FEMA requirements.
Safety. Well, it's safety. We don't want our dogs running over the top of the pile more than they have to. It's already inherently dangerous.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons. And the other reason is the fact that there's a pinpointing factor that can come into, especially the live find dogs, with some of the way that they're trained.
Right. And it's also one of these, it gets into dog selection.
Right.
So the dog selection for that type of application is actually very different than dog selection for wilderness.
Yes. Or dog selection for, let's say explosives.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's when you can't bark.
Yeah. That's, you don't want your dog barking at a bomb.
The barking's bad. Barking's really bad.
Noises, additional noise is bad.
Yeah.
Right?
No, barking could cause things to blow up.
Yeah. And I've seen narcotics dogs absolutely barking at source. And, and it's anticipation and arousal.
Yeah.
And that's, it's just a thing. It's a training challenge. So I think if we really look at you've landed in, and this is also one of those things too, where even on the end of a find refind, I've seen people want to train the dog to go out, come back to them and bark at them.
I've seen that a lot.
For the refind, which by the way, hands down, I will tell you is still better in my book than a bump.
Yes, but then it also gets back to the whole fatigue part of it.
It's the fatigue part. It's the, what are you cueing?
Yeah.
Right. How are you cueing the dog to do a thing?
Right.
Right. And, yes, you can fade it, but then it always falls back to how expensive is that bark for your dog?
Yeah. And when you're doing a refine, think about all the extra energy that the dog is expending just bouncing back and forth. It could be 600. If your subject is 600 yards away, they're running back and forth in the heat, having to bark at you each time. Right.
And so it can be expensive.
Yeah.
And then layered on top of the can we versus should we,
right?
Having a barking dog, whether you have a barky dog or not, then we have the criteria in which you train it.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's a big one.
That's the one where I went, because my criteria for a prize for live find, and the fact that, to your point, the way the pinpointing, the way that they're rewarded, right? You start with the barrel that, the tug goes through that mouse hole. Right. They're barking because they're like, coming out of this mouse hole is going to be my tug.
So at the end of the day.
Yeah.
What that actually is placement of reinforcement.
Yes.
Right. Your reinforcement is coming out of a very specific spot. So the dog learns, and you are using that placement of the reinforcer to actually get the dog to do the thing in the exact body position that you want the dog to have.
Right.
So it gets lots of reinforcement for that. And by the way, if you come to chicken workshops, you learn about placement of reinforcement. But
Right. But you can actually be a little messier with live find,
you
right?
can.
Because it's still, that toy is still going to come out that mouse hole initially in the barrel.
Right.
And then you get on the pile, right?
You
the
have lids
still
and
has a toy, and you
holes
have lids and
and
holes, and right. And it still comes out
right.
away, out from the victim.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then you go into like something that can't do that.
Right. And let's talk about an inanimate object,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's, when we're thinking about a bark and hold, it's for cadaver or whatever other odor you might want to have. Because even wilderness dogs doing a bark and hold, the dog typically orients towards the subject because the subject is the one who provides the toy or reinforcement. When you start getting into inanimate objects, articles, I don't know why you'd want to bark and hold on an article, but whatever. Cadaver work, that sort of thing. Reinforcement, no matter, unless you're going to use ball poppers all of the time or something of that nature, the reinforcement always comes from the handler.
Yeah.
Now, I have my own opinions. I'm sure everybody is like super shocked that I have opinions on ball poppers because they actually start reinforcing a actual different behavior than staying close to source because the ball pops out of it. And what happens is after so many repetitions, the dogs learn to back up and anticipate the ball pop.
Oh,
Right.
So they're barking and backing up?
They're barking and backing up, or they're backing up while they're sitting down and looking up into space because that's where the ball's going. So think placement reinforcement.
It would also be a contextual cue.
Yeah.
So so then I'm just kind of thinking out loud here because I haven't used one of those. So I just want to kind of disclaimer on that. But I understand the concept. So let's say you're now you've trained on the ball popper and now you've got to transfer that skill to an inanimate object. Like that's actually like a real hidden source.
Right.
And there's no ball to be popped. At that point, I would think, unless you went back and forth back to the ball popper frequently, you're going to potentially lose your criteria unless you have a really, really good marker system.
Yeah, and or you're absolutely relying on your timing to make a ball appear or a toy or food or whatever appear right in front of the dog's nose, doing direct reinforcement.
That sounds like you'd have to have a heck of an arm.
You have to have really good arm. You have to have really good aim.
Yeah.
And incredible timing, because just think, as you're starting to pull your arm back to throw, the dog may have already turned to look at you.
Right.
And so you're doing all of that sort of stuff. So you get into that whole criteria creep where it's really easy to train them to do all sorts of things that you didn't actually mean.
Yeah.
And one of the, if you think about behaviors that a bark and hold requires, it's actually 3. It's a stand, typically, unless you're training a sit or something to go along with it, right?
Oh, why? Like why?
Don't get me anyway. It's a stand.
We'll have to talk about that in a minute. Clearly,
We'll talk about that in a minute. They have to stand, they have to stay, which for the purpose of this particular conversation is going to be a behavior.
Okay.
And then they have to bark. So they have to do 3 different things.
They have to bark continuously.
Well, theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you start thinking about it like that way, now we also have to add in the other criteria of how far away are you from source?
Yeah.
And it's really easy for, and a lot of dogs, hands down, when we're doing this, orient back towards the handler
Right.
to bark.
Right.
And the criteria I had for Nico was, I don't care what direction you're facing,
Mm-hmm.
as long as your front feet, because, oh my God, if I made it his back feet, it would just be ugly, or all 4 feet are within 4 feet. He's like 4 feet long. So anyway, so his front 2 feet are within 2 feet of source.
Yeah.
Stay there until released.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't care if it's me bringing you the toy. I don't care if it's me whistling you off. You just have to stay there. And the other side of that is because of the progression in which I trained him. He was trained in the beginning, nose as close as you can get it.
Mm-hmm.
That just like what you're starting to do with Jack,
Right.
is you bring in the concept of a nose poke.
Right.
Is it actually physically, is it actually on a wear or a show me type of cue? I don't do that because I don't train trick ponies. I train search dogs.
Right.
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 And so I train detection dogs that are not trick ponies that I have to ask them, show me 5 times, because if I'm quiet, they will automatically offer nose closer to source.
Right.
And I don't make them do it 500 times. Can you tell I'm a little angsty about that? So
This is after 2 days off of teaching camp.
I know, right? Go figure.
Right.
So literally it is, think about the criteria that you're now as a trainer
Yeah.
have to balance on the fly in every training session with a highly driven dog who wants its thing.
Yeah. And the other thing is that we are such pattern creatures.
Mm-hmm.
It is so easy to release them after a certain number of barks. And so it's like, I found it was like when I was starting to, and then, if you increase your distance, all of a sudden
things fall apart.
Yeah. You're trying to get in. And this is always a hard thing to balance, is like, it's a new source, right? Because,
Right.
we've got to pair them to all different kinds of sources for HR. And so I may, whistle him for, like just getting to source, right? Nose to source for the first time. But then I'm like, okay, but now I need the barks. It's so easy to default to always whistling after 2 barks.
Yeah.
Right. And what you get is a dog that goes bark, bark, and then releases.
Bolts off.
Because they know that you have the toy. So trying to balance that while you're like, okay, well, I need to work on duration and I don't want you moving. I don't even want you creeping.
Right.
Because sometimes people think like, okay, well, the dog's still there. Yeah. But if the dog creep forward 2 feet, that 2 feet then becomes 4 feet, then becomes 6 feet, then becomes leaving source.
Right. And or barking as they're running back to you.
Right.
And it is what people need to understand is one of the reasons it's so hard is because if you start clicking weight shifts, that is actually the beginning of the step away.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's how carefully, we've always talked about, okay, I want to mark something as they're shifting their weight backwards. So we're marking weight shifts.
Right.
And in order to do that, you have to, be really, really cognizant about the fact of where your pendulum is at on what you're rewarding. Reinforcing, sorry. And then 2, recognize that when you're starting to see 1 or 2 or 3 repetitions in a certain way, that you had better be shifting a criteria someplace else to counterbalance it.
Yep.
All of the time.
Yeah.
And it is, even for the life of the dog, Nico, I will say, he's getting ready to turn 9. He has a really, really nice bark alert. It was awesome to go through the whole process of training him to do it, but he is a naturally barky dog.
Yeah.
I taught him to bark on cue out for a walk one day in the middle of the alfalfa field, right?
Yeah.
That it was just that easy.
Yeah.
And he's never been reinforced for barking any other time.
Oh, which I think we need to talk about, because then it's the whole demand barking thing.
Oh my gosh, yes, because oh my God.
Yeah. I know. But that can end up like, how many dogs have you seen that just bark all the time while they're searching too?
Right. Which is an arousal thing.
Yeah. So
right?
if they're arousal barking, so between arousal barking and demand barking.
Right. And when we're talking demand barking, because anybody who does search and rescue or anything of this has got, that dog on the team who they want to bark alert. So they have been told, if your dog barks, you must always reinforce them, which is how you create a demand barker.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And that is actually not how you do it.
Yeah.
Because barking should be under stimulus control.
Right. And if they're barking at the wrong time, you need to address it. So, Jack was on the platform. And so he gets on the platform. He's like, how about a bark? And I'm like, I'm not paying that.
Right.
You need to knock that off.
Right. That doesn't get you anything.
Yeah. Barking only happens
when I cue you to do it. And that cue is either a physical cue for me or a verbal cue for me, or it's finding target odor.
Yeah.
It's nothing else.
Right.
It's not barking at me because I happen to be holding your toy.
Right. Right. Or barking barking because I'm excited because I'm going to go off and search.
Right. That doesn't get you reinforced either.
No.
And so I want people to think about that when they're told, no, every time your dog barks now, you have to reinforce it.
Oh, no.
That's just being a lazy trainer.
Yeah, no, the answer to that's no.
And you guys can't see my face, but I'm like,
she's like really like,
I'm probably going to make some people angry with that, but I can't help it.
You're very flinchy today.
I am flinchy
today.
I am.
You're very flinchy today. So what do we say that we were like also talking about? Was it, the barking? I think
and
that was
sitting.
Oh, the sitting or the downing.
Downing.
So one of the hard parts that I'm finding, and this is just a challenge, and it's like, I mean, he's doing a really good job of this, but it is challenging that they have to stay in one place to bark. And that's a hard thing to do, especially once you have to, I have two different ways of either I'm using the whistle and then he can come to me to get the reinforcement, but then it's actually an additional skill.
Right.
To be able to move up to reward him in place, which means that he has to hold that duration of the bark even longer. So in trying to work this is where that stay part gets really complicated. And I think a lot of times I see people that, and I know you've seen a ton of this, right? Where to counterbalance that, they're trying to do a sit or a down to keep stay. And now I'm like, now that I'm doing this with Jack, I'm like, wow, the number of criteria that needs to be balanced to maintain a really good bark alert. And then if you want to layer on, and in addition to all of that, you need this additional duration behavior.
Right.
Up, sit, or a down could get highly complicated. And I'm not even talking about like, if you're on a pile, like adding in, like, can the dog sit? Can the dog down? I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about, well, what if the dog is standing, giving you this gorgeous bark, but now you've also layered in this criteria.
Now they have to sit too.
Right. So now it's like wrong because they're not sitting.
Right. It's actually, then I start looking at people and going, what do you want? Your dog to stand on its head and yodel?
Let's not introduce that as another TFR. I think that would be highly complicated. Although Jack can stand on his front legs today with his two hind legs on a boulder to pee. That was
weird.
Special.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
Well, and the other things to consider are that it is physically difficult for a dog to bark while laying down,
Yeah.
right? Physiologically, that is a difficult thing for a dog to do. So now we're increasing the cost of that behavior.
Ah,
And you're increasing exponentially the cost of any behavior by time or any criteria by time you add in additional behaviors.
yeah.
There is this thing called behavior economics,
Mm-hmm.
and so we have to worry about how much does a behavior cost.
Yeah.
And so when we start thinking about that, it's one of those things for us as trainers to be very conscious of.
Yeah.
Now, what I am going to say, if people are like dead set, they have to have a bark because they want to bark because they think it's necessary or whatever. And this is not including where it's required by the certification.
Right.
I tell people to always train a stationary behavior first.
Mm-hmm.
So you do train a sit, and I wouldn't even do a stand and stare. And the reason I won't do a stand and stare is because dogs move when they bark.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to start, unless you've got incredibly good timing. And I'm talking, yes, you have to use a clicker timing.
Yeah.
The problem that you're going to start having is you're clicking weight shifts. You're marking weight shifts.
Yeah.
So I tell people that's why I don't like stand and stairs. But the thing that I would tell people to do is to train something like a sit.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, if your dog is too hot and too tired to bark, they will have a sit.
Yeah.
That's at least they found it and they're going to stay there. The bark then can come in later out of frustration.
So is there, and I know I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to answer, but I just figured I'd throw this out. Can you think of any situation where any handler or dog combo should train a bark alert if they're not certifying with a body that requires it?
No.
That was a heck of a lot of silence. You thought about that.
I did. Well, because
You really
my
did.
first thought process was, well, okay, do we want to clump this in with the apprehension type of world? You
Yeah.
know, where you're doing locates of suspects. And I'm like, that's not strict odor work, right?
Right.
And then I was like, okay, how about my conservation work? No, I don't want my dog barking where around bears and or turtles
Yeah.
or, whatever. They don't need to do that.
Yeah.
And, the industry norm for search and rescue is GPS collars.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at 90% of what you're doing, I mean, when I started search and rescue, there was a huge debate on whether your live find dog should even have a bark and hold
Mm-hmm.
because they might scare the subject. And
Yeah. Which I think is probably still relevant.
it is still relevant. I don't know
Yeah.
how much,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit different when you have a big, scary, pointy-eared, black werewolf-looking dog barking at you versus a yellow lab fluffy thing. So, it's that sort of stuff that you have to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I am always thinking about how much maintenance
Mm-hmm.
is it going to be to maintain, how hard is it going to be to maintain that behavior?
And it goes to, and this is a line that I give my sports handlers all the time, that a TFR is really easy to train badly.
It is.
And because it's really easy to train badly and it's even harder to maintain it.
Yes.
And And I want to go back to the thing about behavior economics, because I think a lot of people who may not even know what that is. And I think if we think about this in terms of the dog that you have comes with a wallet. And that wallet is going to vary. Some of your dogs are going to have $1. Some of your dogs are going to have $5. Some of your dogs may even have $10. It depends on the drive of the natural drive level of the dog and the motivation and the money that you've put in that wallet based on your reinforcement system. So let's say you start out with $5 and the behaviors that you're asking your dog to do are going to be withdrawals from that wallet. So let's say your behavior is a complex behavior chain, and that complex behavior chain costs $1, right? So actually your basic behavior might be $1. So maybe your dog, does like
or even 10 cents, right? It's not
whatever it
super, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. But once you start adding criteria, every criteria costs something else. That TFR gets more and more expensive. So now instead of like $1, now we might have $1.50 or
Right.
$2. So now let's say that, okay, well now my TFR costs $2 and I have a $5 dog. So now I'm going out and I'm asking my dog to search. And oh, by the way, now we're talking, maybe we're going to be doing, it's like 85 degrees out in hilly terrain
with 80% humidity and
80% humidity. And my handler is all stressed out because this is a deployment.
And you have to run up and down ravines.
Right. And so now let's say that behavior to either find the person or find source is now a $4 transaction.
Right.
But we have $1.50 TFR and we only have a $5 dog.
Right.
What do we think is going to happen?
And what's really interesting is as we're sitting here talking about this, I'm hoping that my husband lit something on fire back there. Otherwise, we have a huge problem. I'm looking out my kitchen window and there's smoke coming off the backyard or out of the back 40. And I'm like, but okay, that was besides that. Sorry, squirrel.
Farm problems.
I was thinking about the last certification I did with Moses. We were at Ohio's Pile. He was right at 10. It was a hot day in June. And we did our full access pile first so we could climb all over it. And then we're standing at our limited access pile. And he found 2 subjects and literally is standing in this 3rd spot. He's just standing there with a low tail wag.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
And I look at the evaluator and I'm like, he's got enough, he's got another subject right there. And the guy's like, I need 3 barks because that's the requirement of the certification. And I looked at him and said, I know, but I just want you to know that I know my dog has found them. He just doesn't have the gas to bark.
Yeah. Hopefully you haven't missed anybody else.
We passed. We still passed. Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm thinking, I'm like, oh gosh, I hope you didn't miss anybody on the first pile.
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
So we still passed. But it was one of those things where I think about, Moses, who had a find,
right?
Who worked all sorts of places, was a very good dog and didn't have the gas to bark.
Yeah.
And I even think about Nico. I was at a training and we were doing a whole bunch. It was end of day 2 or 3. We were doing a whole bunch of stuff. And the last search of the day was a roadside search.
Mm-hmm.
And we searched it and we're walking on the way back and he goes over and he sniffs something. The tail starts going. He turns around and he sits.
Oh, yeah.
And he sat. I think I let him marinate there
Mm-hmm.
for like a minute, waiting for a bark.
Wow.
And he was like, I can see you.
Yeah.
That's a lot of effort. I'm tired.
Yeah.
And so actually, I modified my criteria on the fly and I just marked him and let him come get his toy
Yeah.
because he wasn't going to move.
Yeah. And that's Nico.
Yeah. And that was Nico, who really likes to bark a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. And he's good.
And he's
He's
and
really,
he's good
really
at
good.
it. So it's one of those things for people to, and a lot of people do this because they think a barking dog looks really sexy.
Yeah.
Some of the cases that I've worked, I really would wish that my dog wouldn't bark because I don't want the public thinking what's happening, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I would really rather get my dog out on the boat and just have him lay down or sit on the boat than bark, because as soon as the dog starts barking, everybody looks at you.
Yeah.
I don't want that. I don't need the family seeing that. I don't want the press cameras on me. I don't want any of that stuff. Just let me get in, do my job, and leave.
You also run the risk of other people interpreting an alert, right? And I've actually seen this where other people are seeing a dog bark, and instead of relying on the handler to make that call,
They think the
they're
dog, oh my God, that's where we have to do things.
right,
Right.
right.
And that's not correct.
It opens you up to more interpretation.
Right. I would agree with that because people are assuming that your dog barks as their trained final response when you're like, no, he thought that guy, well, and this wouldn't be Nico, but I could see Raven being like, that guy looks weird in a hat and sunglasses. I'm going to bark at him. Right.
Or what if it's a dog that's just barking out of arousal?
Right. Or frustration.
Or frustration or something.
Right.
And somebody else takes that as, which, like I said, I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen. And not saying that it's right.
Agreed.
It's actually wrong. You're not supposed to do that.
Right.
But I've seen it happen. So, it's just one of those things.
Yeah. Okay. Here was me thinking, oh my gosh, is talking about how to train a bark alert going to give us a long enough podcast episode?
I know. She's like, Robin even asked me, like, are you sure we're going to have enough for a whole podcast? I'm like, trust me.
It'll work. Yeah.
It'll work. Because it's just, this is gotta be one of the more complicated behaviors that I've really worked on. And the thing is, that's actually one of the things that I love about dog training is you take something, I like to say, okay, here's this complicated behavior. And as the dog starts to learn, I learn more and more how complicated it is. Yeah. And my dog training nerd hat comes out and I'm like, ooh, this is kind of cool. What if I do this? Oh, wow. Look at this complication. What if I do this? Oh, wow. Look at this complication. And for me, I find it a fun, curious thing. And so I'm going through this with my dog and I'm like, wow, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. But in a good way.
It makes you flex your trainer muscles.
It does. But it was also surprising because, I'm a decent trainer, and it was one and I've seen stuff, but sometimes unless you've really try to dig into it, and this goes for anything,
right?
You really appreciate it. I guess that's what I'm trying to say is that I'm going through a process where I'm really learning to appreciate how challenging it is to do it well.
Right.
Because like I said to my sports folks on, in terms of the TFR, it's really easy to train a TFR badly.
It is. Absolutely.
And I think a bark alert is a big example of that. That training something badly is really easy to do. But right? Just in general.
It is.
What we're trying to do here, the quality is important.
Right. Well, and I think I know you guys have heard us say it, and I've heard other trainers say it, sometimes means anytime.
Yeah.
And that absolutely, when you are talking about something with a bark alert, sometimes you can step away means anytime you can step away.
Right.
right? And anytime you can creep and all of these things, and it becomes, you become very, very aware about how poor your timing actually is.
And you know what else? You also learn how resilient your dog is.
Yes, you do.
Because this is a type of behavior where you have to have a resilient dog. Because there are times where you have to say, I'm not taking that at all.
Right. And they're like, but wait.
But wait, I found it. But wait, I barked. Yeah. But this is not a rewardable event.
Exactly.
And, a lot of times we get folks like, I see this on the sport. Well, my dog found it and they feel like they have to reward it. So you do learn through this that your dog just isn't either. They have to be resilient for this.
They do.
Which is another complicating factor.
All right. I think we've covered that. I do have, as part of my training and area search dog class online, I have a module in that class on training a bark and hold.
So by the way, that's an incredible class.
I've gotten, people have been very excited about it. I've also got a training a find refind in there too. So if you are interested in training either one of those,
which is another complicated behavior. Yeah.
Absolutely go check all of that stuff out.
And we'll put a link to that in the show notes also.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. So with that, thanks everybody for listening, and go train.
Canine Detection Collaborative.